We're going to talk about logical fallacies because this week, in general, we are talking about rhetoric, the rhetorical appeals of persuasion. So, logical fallacies are kind of a subgroup of understanding rhetoric and almost kind of understanding how it can be used in a more negative way. So, we can talk about the various strategies of logical fallacies. It's important because depending on what genre you're going to analyze for your rhetorical analysis paper, you might find examples of logical fallacies used in it. So understanding what that is, being able to identify it can help you analyze further. So let's talk about logic in general. Logic is the study and use of reasoning. So logos, the logical appeal. Most arguments, of course, depend on the use of logic. Whether that use is good or bad now is how logical fallacies come into play. A logical fallacy is an error in the structure of an argument that invalidates the argument. Or it's an error that is misleading. It misleads the audience. So these usually aren't effective in argumentation, and they may appear more than you think. So just understanding and identifying logical fallacies helps you become better at critically analyzing any type of genre. It helps you become a better researcher, and it also helps you just become a better everyday communicator with people you know, or just in a professional or academic setting, because understanding the error of argumentation makes you a more credible communicator and user of rhetoric. So let's talk about some common logical fallacies. There's many different types of logical fallacies, but this PowerPoint highlights the main ones. And you can always find out more. I tend to Google each one just to have a little bit more of them in an example, but we're just going to kind of summarize them in this lecture. So the first one is hasty generalization, false syllogism. That's coming to a general conclusion based on hasty or faulty evidence. So here's an example, and there's more examples. I recommend you download this PowerPoint while you're watching the video, because I am going to make reference to some use YouTube videos, so I recommend that you review the video before we go into the examples. But this is a link to more examples of the hasty generalization fallacy. So, for example, Tina is an idiot. Tina is a woman, therefore all women are idiots. Or Joe is a jerk. Joe is a man, therefore all men are jerks. Or I don't like pickles, and I am a man, therefore real men do not like pickles. It's a generalization. You can't subject a whole group to one claim. So these are three examples of using the hasty generalization fallacy. Ad misericordiam, or to pity, is attempting to exploit someone's feelings of pity in order to persuade them. So an example, just to summarize, someone doing something terribly wrong and using emotion to get out of it. An example I saw online is, pretend that you're watching a trial and the jury finds the person guilty, and somebody says you can't find them guilty because that would make their mother feel terrible. That's appealing to pity, and it's not an accurate form of argument. And it's not a fair form of argument. Emotional fallacies in general, just to continue the appeal to pity, but there can be an appeal to emotion as well. And that's either appealing just to pity or any other type of emotion that is irrelevant to the argument. Now, if it's a part of the argument, it's okay, but if somebody appeals to emotion that is distracting and it's completely irrelevant and not connected to the argument, then it's a fallacy. So if you want to pause the video and watch this first scene from a movie, we'll go ahead and talk about how it appeals to emotion. Think about how it appeals to emotion anyways while you're reviewing it. So if you watch the scene, it is from the movie Austin Powers. You all know me already, and I love my cheesy 90s comedies from the 90s. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But back to our lecture. This is an appeal to emotion in a silly, humorous way, of course. But Dr. Evil is the, quote, villain in the movie, and he just found out he had a son, Scott. So he and his son meet for the first time in that scene, and he's appealing to Scott's emotion. Scott says, I hate you, I don't want anything to do with you, stay away from me. Dr. Evil's very distracting to him, and he says, "No, give me a hug. Come on, give me a hug. I've never seen you. I'm your father. Give me a hug." They're appealing to emotion, and Dr. Evil is making it irrelevant to the argument. His son doesn't want to hear about it right now, and he's putting the emotion off to the side and adding different emotion to the argument that has nothing to do with the conversation. The second emotional fallacy is appeal to fear. Appealing to fear when fear does not apply. So in this example right here, either P or Q is true. If I say Q is frightening, therefore P is true, that's appealing to fear. You're making the audience feel afraid of Q, so you stay away from Q. And that's not the correct way to use argumentation. So if you want to pause this video and watch the second YouTube scene, think about how one character appeals to fear on the audience. So if you watch the video, it was a scene from the movie Beauty and the Beast, and the villain in that scene is Gaston, and he is appealing successfully to the audience by appealing to fear. He is trying to tell the people of the town that the beast is evil. He's a beast. So we have to kill him, because if we don't, he'll kill all of us. He'll destroy our town. And the townspeople are listening. They're saying, "You're right. He will hurt us. We have to do something." He's trying to make them fear the beast, which is not true, because if you've seen the movie, the beast is not evil. Gaston is the evil one. So that's an appeal to fear. False analogy is comparing two things that are not comparable. They don't belong in the same sentence of comparison. So this is an example I found online. Failing to tip a waitress is like stealing money out of somebody's wallet. It's false analogy because you can't be arrested for not tipping, so you can't compare it to stealing. Now, those have different situations. It depends on context, of course, but just in general, if we're thinking about it, you can't really compare the statements. Of course, not tipping is bad, but you have to think about it as a different situation. So that's one example of false analogy. Hypothesis contrary to fact. If somebody offers an unsupported claim about the past or future, this fallacy is based on a hypothetical situation. If you're using something, an event, or a person in the past to make an argument if you try to make it relevant to right now, it's not accurate, it's not logical, it's not factual even. So these are two examples. If President Reagan were still alive, he'd support Donald Trump. We don't know that. We can't guarantee that. So it's hypothesis contrary to fact. Or if we had elected Al Gore in 2000, climate change wouldn't be an issue. He wasn't elected in 2000, so we can't use something that didn't happen in the past for something now. It's just hypothesis. We can't determine it, so it's a logical fallacy. Appeal to credibility. Appeal to credibility is if a person's credibility is not relevant to the debate. So if their entire argument is just about their credentials and nothing else, it's a fallacy. It doesn't add to the debate, to the conversation. This is an older ad, but it's saying, for a better start in life, start cola earlier. Get those kids drinking cola earlier. How soon is too soon? Not soon enough. But if you look at the very bottom, the Soda Pop Board of America, just their name alone, they are hanging on that credibility that they represent all of America, so they know what they're talking about. They want to get your kids started early on Coca-Cola. Not good, and it's just appealing to credibility. Red herrings are kind of an umbrella term for a few different fallacies, but red herring is an excellent example as well. It's using something that is irrelevant to the conversation. So this image actually represents it very well. If person S on the left is talking about climate change, they're giving a speech about climate change. Maybe let's say they're talking about how we need to improve to have a better climate, to save the world, to go green, things like that. Then person F refutes the argument by saying, "We can't worry about the environment, we're in the middle of a war." If the debate had nothing to do with war, if the two people debating were not talking about war, and this person just brings it up randomly as a response, that's using red herring. It's used to detract the audience to think about something else so that their mind escapes from thinking about climate change. Ad hominem is very similar to red herring. It's a type of red herring, but it's a little bit more of a personal attack distraction, meaning a debater commits the ad hominem fallacy when they introduce irrelevant personal premises about their opponent. Such red herrings may successfully detract the opponent or audience from the topic of the debate. So, if you look to the image on the right, this person says, "Can we let a shrimp like this run our great country?" Their conversation most likely was never about height, so it was about running a country. So if a person makes a personal attack on their opponent that has nothing to do with the debate, that's committing ad hominem fallacy. It has irrelevant, it's making a personal attack. Conversation was not about that, so they're trying to detract the audience, so they stop thinking about the conversation and instead start thinking about how that person looks or acts. If you pause the video, there's an excellent example of ad hominem in this YouTube scene. So go ahead and pause the video. It's a little bit more of a red herring, I would say, but think about how there's a distraction in the debate. So if you pause the video, you'll see that even in the cartoon world, there are logical fallacies, and it was a scene from SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob is saying, "This is my candy bar." They're arguing about the candy, and Patrick commits a red herring type of irrelevant conclusion conversation by incorrectly saying, "Liar, liar, pants on fire," and SpongeBob corrects him, his incorrect usage of the saying. Therefore, SpongeBob is totally distracted about what they were talking about. So it's committing a little bit, he didn't make an attack on SpongeBob's appearance, so it's a little bit more of a red herring type or irrelevant just conclusion in general. A few more logical fallacies. The straw man fallacy is quite wordy in this description. It occurs when a person attempts to refute an argument or conclusion, not by showing that the argument is unsound or that the conclusion is false, but instead by falsely attributing a different argument or conclusion. Basically, if I could summarize, if person A makes a claim, person B attacks person A's claim, they mention what the claim is about, but they exaggerate it. So an excellent example I found online of that, I tend to just Google these again just to get context of, or just to have specific examples, but one example I found online was if person A says, "We should also include non-Christmas music in the performance," and person B says, "Well, you just want to eliminate Christmas music from the radio then too." They had nothing to do with that. Person B is exaggerating what person A said. They're mentioning Christmas music, but they're exaggerating the statement. So there's plenty of those online if you want further information on those. Slippery slope. This type is basically, just to summarize this one, is that if a chain of events happens, it will continue to happen in a negative way. Or if a person changes one part of the past, if one part of the past was changed, then it's a slope, and a negative chain of occurrences will happen after. Now this scene, if you want to pause it and watch it, it's an advertisement. So go ahead and pause it if you want to review the slippery slope at work. Now if you pause the video and noticed the slippery slope, the advertisement is a little bit more of a positive one. It's saying, if the guy didn't get on the train, the course of events of his life would be different. Maybe it would be bad, but slippery slope usually is overall just about bad. If you take out one thing, then a negative chain of events will continue to happen. And that's, we can't guarantee that again. So but slippery slope is almost more like a domino effect. Appeal to probability, neglect of probability. A rhetorician appeals to probability when they use the chance of something happening in order to argue for that change, or it's overall just used to make an argument in general. So this example is excellent. Something can go wrong, therefore something will go wrong. It's invalid. We can't guarantee that. It's making almost an assumption as well, but it's just appealing more to the probability, the chances. An argument of ignorance, to close on, is appeal to an argument with zero evidence. If there's no evidence, that's embarrassing. It's lacking your credibility and it makes somebody seem very ignorant. Those are all of them.